Samsung White's victory.
Thank you very much, Riv. What a performance from Samsung White. Let's jump straight into it. Pull up the graphic. That will show us the two team compositions. We saw the Akali being pulled out. We saw Dandy on Rengar. We know why it's been banned so many times. And Deft pulling the Varus. I personally was concerned about double invincibility against single target assassins, but all fears I had have been taken away.
So the first thing I want to talk about as an AD carry player and a big Varus aficionado is I do love the Varus pick. He is actually incredibly good mid-game. This is something the casters were talking about, is getting someone who can spike a bit earlier. And this would allow his team to siege, pick fights, and try to push an advantage and you know, do good things in the mid-game here. But on the other side, though, I love the Looper Akali pick. He played Singed last week. He played Akali now. I mean, how many times do you play against Akali in competitive? How prepared could Blue possibly be for this champion? And to be honest, it showed in this game.
And just like you said about the Varus into Twitch, that's a really good matchup in lane. But it seems like Twitch is the champion that Deft and Imp have the highest proficiency on. It's actually their most played across this tournament as well. So the fact that he would give Imp his best champion means, okay, I can play this counter and I can win. Now that he's lost, what is he going to do moving forward? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, I think that coming into this game, Blue expected, after not banning Zilean, to have White ban it out. But I think White really called their bluff, forcing that first pick Zilean, which allowed this very dangerous Twitch pick to go right over into White's hands. Now, this is only Heart's third professional game ever played on Zilean, so we're not looking at a team that's very experienced with this champion. And indeed, one of the main reasons they lost in the Champions Summer Final was because the KT Arrows repeatedly picked Zilean against them, and they didn't really understand how it worked. And it was a big problem. And going to Spick and Ban Phase 2, you know, I thought there were going to be some jungle bans, but they just let Spirit have Lee Sin. And that's how confident they are with Dandy's Rengar. Go ahead and take him up in the first round of the draft, and then say, well, just throw at me whatever you've got.
In Heart's defense, so it's incredibly hard for one to play Zilean with no main tank that you can send forward and having 3 squishies. The timing on the ulti becomes hard, and it's even harder to play Zilean in a lane swap. It messes with your tier timing. He went for the early side stone, but constantly ran out of mana, and because the game is so fast-paced, moving in between the lanes, he just doesn't bring the utility that any other support brings in terms of lane swaps. And then later, as we saw, if you fall behind, doesn't matter if you resurrect your teammates, they just get blown up again.
Well, talk to me a little bit about Samsung Blue. They were the ones that started their lane swaps quite extensively throughout the game. We saw repeated attempts to gank Pawn in the mid lane. We saw them trying to keep Looper's Akali down. It didn't work out for them. We do have a replay that I'd like to get to in just a moment or two where, you know, Looper, he sort of got back into the game. I mean, you can see the team on stage still talking. Freak, talk me through this first blood.
Right, so the first thing to talk about is look at Mata on the minimap. This gank is pre-orchestrated. He has already left the mid lane and is roaming down with the sole purpose of joining this fight. And you'll notice by the end, Mata's here, and none of the support or AD carry from Samsung Blue do arrive. The other thing to point out is, again, this team is not ready for an Akali. There are no pink wards at all in the inventory, and the exhaust gets blown early, because when do you exhaust a top laner? Almost never, except when you fight Akali. So roll the clip out, and we'll see what happens. Even though the initial gank kind of fails, he burns his W, doesn't quite get a stun early on, and in fact, Pawn gets kind of pushed around, you kick out of the ulti. The exhaust is poorly timed, it's kind of wasted because he's stunned during it, but there's the Kayle ult burn, there's a lot more burned, and finally the TP comes in. Looper gets to stealth up, and even though the entirety of Samsung White are down below half HP, they can constantly juggle aggro. There's a knock-up in the exhaust from Mata and the shield to increase the damage. Again, pre-orchestrated gank, very well played, guaranteed 4v3, plus a couple of misplays.
So early game definitely going in the favor of Samsung White. From there on out, they really just accelerated their lead. I want to pull a second replay up quickly before we start to discuss some of the bigger, series impacting decisions. Crepo, talk me through this play.
So yeah, what I want to highlight in this replay is basically how smart these teams are and how good at their champions. Even in a lot of trades, they will do something a little bit more than other teams. So what's going to happen in this replay is they're going to flank in and they're going to aim for the kill, but immediately they notice that there's 2 people flanking them from the downside area, so they'll turn down instead of up. Then they realize they're overextended. Then Mata comes in with a beautiful Janna ulti, and instead of fleeing, they basically use Acorn as an escape vessel. We can roll the clip and you'll see what I mean. Basically, so they're coming in, they're like, okay, we're ignoring Acorn, we're going on Spirit and Data here. They realize they're overextended, Mata stays behind them, positions himself right in the middle of the lane, and in the meanwhile, basically, Acorn gets pulled up, Looper jumps to Acorn, they split to the side, and then they go for the pincer once their mid laner joins them.
And just keep watching Dandy. He hits so many bolas over the course of this fight. I mean, he just stopped Spirit dead in its tracks coming in alongside of Mata using that Monsoon as a peeling device.
And the only, the biggest play in this replay is actually a mistake. Spirit goes for the flash kick, and he doesn't want to get the kick flash off. He just wants to flash kick into Yasuo ulti immediately, but his mid laner wasn't ready for it. The plan fails, and once you like miss that combo, it gets brutal.
Doublelift, I have to ask you, what does Samsung do in this game? You know, the rest of this matchup really was just all about White cleaning up. They had a massive lead. They punished Blue over and over and over. How do you come back from a 28-game smash? I mean, there's the team on your screen. They're deep in.
There is so many variables that to put in to account, but I do think this is just like my own personal opinion. So Royal Club versus EDG, Janna was 3-0 in that series. OMG versus Najin Shield, Janna was 3-0 in that series. I don't know why people are still leaving Janna up so late in the draft and still picking champions like Lee Sin and Yasuo into it. Honestly, I think right now Janna's the best support in the game, and it seems really strange that the people would just keep underestimating her.
I actually got a really cool stat from that earlier when I was looking up whether Morgana was being played a lot. Actually, our stats guy came like, hey, but you should really look at Janna because she's been picked now 38 times, won 24 times, and only lost 14. That's by far the biggest discrepancy in win-losses and the highest pick rate. I don't know why teams are just not picking Janna early.
Exactly.
Doesn't make sense.
People are slow to adapt. I mean, right, Akali came out new, Janna was new to the tournament, and you've got to take some time to realize sometimes the power is not what you expect it to be.
We've had 37 picks.
Yeah.
And Mata, though, you really have to commend his Janna play in that game because he saved Imp in a lot of situations and allowed Imp to just remove Yasuo. We didn't have a replay of it, but that last fight when he flashed right on top of him to monsoon Yasuo away, it was just a beautiful play. And man, Mata is really coming up clutch here.
Well, let's just get one last closing thought from the AD carry player. The Varus pick, I don't think I saw Chain of Corruption connect. Obviously, it was too far behind for it really to matter.
Yeah.
If it did, is that a pick you expect to see again?
Absolutely not. Oh my god. I really want to see... I always say this. Def should just play Corki into Twitch. That is his best matchup. His Corki is the best Corki I've ever seen in my life.
Well, closing thoughts, Freak.
Yeah, I actually do think Varus can work. Specifically, I think it was like this whole planned thing. Twitch opens up when someone gets Varus ulted, the target gets revived, and then they just kill Twitch. And like, great, we're good. But obviously it didn't pay out, but I think that was the thought process.
Janna is the counter.
Yeah, there's also difficulty. You've got Rengar and Akali to deal with that as well. But anyways, guys, we do have to take a quick break, reset for Game 2. As we go, the Samsung teams are very close and have a friendship that has made both teams better. But as you've just seen, neither team will be pulling their punches on the Rift.
일단 삼성 화이트와 저희 팀은 되게 친해요.
합숙은 같이 해요. 네, 방만 다르게 하고 이제 한국 대회에서는 이제 최고의 라이벌이라 불릴 정도로 근데 또 저희 팀 내적으로만 보면은 그렇게 막 라이벌 관계가 아니고 약간 친구 같은 그런 팀원들이거든요.
저희 쪽이 형들이 많으니까 저희 쪽이 큰 형으로 할게요.
큰 형, 작은 형. 좀 쌍둥이로 치자면은 네, 저희가 좀 일찍 태어났을 뿐인 것 같아요.
화이트 팀이 저희 형제 팀이란 게 정말 저희한테는 큰 축복이었던 것 같아요. 저희 팀 자체가 일단 성적이 많이 안 좋은 팀이었는데 화이트 팀과 많이 연습하고 또 배우고 그런 것 때문에 이제 저희가 많이 이렇게 성장할 수 있었던 것 같아요.
다대가 저희 팀에 있었던 게 아마 충분히 도움이 될 거라 생각해요. 저희 팀의 전반적인 오도도 다대가 담당했었고 이제 저희 팀의 부족한 부분을 많이 겪다가 나간 선수니까 아마 그만큼 저희 팀을 잘 알고 있지 않을까 생각해요.
그 팀원들과 친하지만 화이트 팀원들과 친하지만 대회에선 그런 게 없기 때문에 그냥 팀과 팀이고
제가 다대형 입장이라면 정말 화이트 팀은 꼭 항상 깨부셔야 될 상대로 이렇게 기억할 것 같아요. 목숨을 걸고 꼭 부셔줘야 되지 않나.
평소에는 또 대회 없을 때는 친하게 지내는데 또 토너먼트에서 만나면 좀 뭔가 보이지 않는 벽이 이제 좀 생기더라고요. 지금은 좀 그런 시기인 것 같아요.
그냥 서로 연습만 하고 잘 안 마주치는 것 같아요.
이번이 4강에서는 3시즌 연속 만나게 되는 게다가 롤드컵 4강이라는 대회인데 이번에는 좀 지면은 좀 타격일 것 같은데요.